Okay, hello Year 11. So welcome to the Applied Science presentation. Hopefully in this presentation I'm going to outline what the course involves, the requirements, various different topics and assessments that are actually included, and clear up any frequently asked questions or FAQs, and also introduce you to our fantastic teaching team within the Applied Science course.
Hello everyone, I'm Mr. Wilson. I'm one of the physics teachers here at Harden High School, and I am involved with this Level 3 BTEC in Applied Science in years 12 and 13. I'm a qualified physics teacher, but I've also got more than 20 years industry experience before I became a teacher. I was in the survey and site investigation industry, and I worked all over the world, so I have a good insight into what is required by industry and what this course can deliver in relation to it. Like I said, I'm going to be involved with the physics element, so we're going to start by improving your math skills, and then the main elements that are covered are waves and wave theory. We talk about the nature of light in all of its different forms across the electromagnetic spectrum, how waves transfer energy, and then how musical instruments work, how waves are used in medicine and for communication and things. And then I look after the investigation side, where we're looking at energy transfer, so we have to talk a lot about the nature of energy before doing that. I'm a huge fan of this course. I think it's a great course for those people who don't like the more rigorous theory-based elements of physics, chemistry and biology. It's got a huge practical basis for it, and it's good for those people who want to be able to problem solve throughout their careers. I must say it's not the easy option. You have to be much more independent than you have been throughout your GCSEs, and you will be required to be through a number of other A-levels that you're going to be doing. You won't be used to this, and this is a skill in itself which this course instills in you. It's equivalent to a full A-level by the end of 2 years, so it is not the easy option. I need to say that again. And for employment and further studies or apprenticeships beyond sixth form, it's a great course to have. Future jobs can lead to anything in the energy industry, whether that's oil and gas or renewables, medicine, sports, any type of technician work where you collect the data and get to know the people and how everything works. It's a fantastic into a lot of industries and apprenticeships. So I recommend this course to you, and I look forward to seeing you in September.
I'm Mrs. Alice. I hope this video finds you and your family safe at this really difficult time. I'm sure you're concerned at the minute about your options, so I'm just going to give you a short description of the Applied Science course. If you've got any questions at all, please email me, Mr. Dobson or Mr. Wilson. I've been teaching chemistry now at Harden High School for over 20 years, including A-level. I therefore teach the chemistry element of this course. This part of the course entails lots of practicals and enables you to carry out experiments to investigate the theories of chemistry.
Okay, now the standard entry requirements for the Applied Science course at level 3 is you need to have a minimum of a grade C in science, English and also in maths. Now of course there's obviously a lot of science involved, it's applied science, but there's a lot of report writing as well, so there's a requirement for good English skills, good literacy, and there's also a lot of mathematics and statistics involved, so a grade C minimum in maths is going to help your numeracy side of the course as well. Of course, if you've got a B or an A, you're welcome to come onto the course as well, but that's just our minimum requirement. We also want you to be really positive as well and get stuck into the course and be hard working. Okay, it's not an easy course at all. You need to put in the graft and the effort, and if you do so, you'll be really successful. Now the standard course that we teach at in the sixth form is a 2-year course, and that involves 4 units of work, and then when you get your qualification, that's then similar to a full A-level. There is an option where you might be able to cash in at the end of the first year, so that's equivalent effectively to an AS level, but that's a little bit more, that's less common. Okay, so most people will do 2 full years, but there is the option of doing the 1 year. Depends on in terms of how many UCAS points that you require to apply for your university courses, or maybe even further courses in college. It's just something to consider. If you don't need that many points, you're just looking to top up your total, then you may go for the 1 year, but most students tend to go for the 2 full years. Now, if you want to get yourself organised either before you start the course in September or in September itself, then I'd recommend you getting yourself a textbook. Now, you might go for a slightly shorter version where you're getting the revision guide, which is the document, the one on the left hand side, and that's available on Amazon for about maybe £10. The one on the right hand side is the teacher book, the book we use it actually in class to teach the course. Very detailed notes and diagrams, and that covers you for Unit 1, Unit 2, 3, and also Unit 8 as well. So that will cover you for the full 2-year course. It's a little bit more expensive. It's about £20, £25 on Amazon. We do provide you with access though to the free e-version, the electronic version of the textbook, but that only covers you Unit 1, 2, and 3. And people work in different ways. Some people like to have it on the screen, but some people like to have a copy actually in their hands where they can put post-it notes in and highlight things. It's completely up to you how you work. Will determine which one of these you need. But I definitely recommend you get at least a revision guide, which is going to help you massively with the Unit 1 external exams, which are quite tough. So I'd recommend getting that, and if you choose to and you have the funding, then you could go for the textbook itself as well. Now, in terms of the course content itself, Unit 1 is called Principles and Applications of Science, and it's basically a theory-based course where you look at a lot of the theory in biology, chemistry and physics, and I'll be teaching the biology content, Mrs. Ellis will be teaching the chemistry, and Mr. Wilson will be teaching the physics. So you've got a specialist teacher for each of the subjects, and you are then examined in January with 3 exam papers. Each paper is 40 minutes and is worth 30 marks, so the entire process is 90 marks, and then you're awarded a grade for that particular part of the course. Okay. Now, you can resit that exam in the summer as well, and you can also have a go at that in January and June of year 13 as well. So potentially there's 4 attempts at those exams. However, if you do resit them, you're going to have to resit all 3. It's not like you could maybe just resit the physics part or the biology part. You have to resit it as a collective. Okay. You always keep your best mark, so it's not like your mark will go down, but it just takes the pressure off a little bit knowing that you've got a little bit of a backup plan there. Okay. In terms of the grading system is obviously, if you don't do very well, you can fail. But there's also something called a near pass. So if you get close to a pass, they give you what's called a near pass, and that's around about 20% on the paper. And as long as you pass everything else in the course, you can pass overall, and you won't need to resit that exam. Okay. Now, of course, if you want to get higher than a pass, you're probably going to need to resit it anyway to boost your total score points. The pass is normally around about 35%. The merit is worth normally about 50 to 52%, and then the distinction is in the 70% region. Okay, and they tend to be roughly around those numbers over the last maybe 3 years. Okay, and so it all depends on what you're aiming to get from this particular course. Okay, now Unit 2 is called Scientific Techniques and Procedures, and this is a very predominantly heavy on the chemistry side of the course. Okay, so a lot of this unit is actually taught by Mrs. Ellis. So Mrs. Ellis will be teaching the titrations and colorimetry aspects, and also the chromatography. So you've got a specialist chemist there with many years experience teaching those aspects. Mr. Wilson is teaching the calorimetry, and I'm going to be teaching the report writing skills, and also a unit which is about the skills development. Okay, so this will pick up heavily on practical work and practical skills that we use in the laboratory, but also how we can write reports about our findings, and also to evaluate the experiments, and also evaluate the skills we've developed as well. So that's going to be quite useful for you if you're looking to go into a very practical subject. You know, if you're going into maybe some of the laboratory technician work, sports science, physiotherapy, nursing, that type of thing, it's going to be quite useful, because they're very big nowadays on evaluating your own performance and how you can improve. Okay, that is actually a coursework based unit, so there's no exam per se on that. and your assessment will be a piece of coursework which your teacher, so Mrs. Ellis, Mr. Wilson or myself, will actually assess. And again, there's no near pass on this one. It's either fail, pass, merit or distinction. And you're given a bit of a framework to work from, and then you can produce a report, which is the evidence that you understand the concepts within that particular unit. Okay, so in that particular unit, you've got effectively 4 separate reports, and then that will provide you a grade for that particular unit. Okay, now Unit 3 is a practical skills assessment. Now this is actually an external assessment. Now it's worth quite a big chunk of your grade. It's worth about 1/3 of your grade. So if you do really well on this, it's going to set you up really, really well to get a good grade in this course. It focuses quite heavily on practical investigation, so all the various skills involved in an investigation, starting right at the beginning from what we call a hypothesis. So you make a hypothesis, and then you plan an investigation, working through right from the equipment that you require, looking at the health and safety aspects of that investigation, what are the hazards, what are the risks, and how can we reduce them, known as control measures. We look at then variables, we look at how to design the results table, we look at actually then physically the method involved. We collect the results safely. We then do some analysis of those results by performing certain calculations and statistics, such as calculating a mean. We might look at something called standard deviation. We look at things like error, where errors are coming from in our experiment. We then draw our graphs, a relevant graph. We make conclusions on our findings. We can also then evaluate the experiment itself as well. And we can also perform various statistical analyses, things like chi-squared or the t-test, to look at how significant our findings are. Okay, so it's quite heavy on investigation work, and there's a lot of various subcomponents within that particular unit. Within that unit, there are 5 practicals which you might actually be examined on. Okay, now normally they'll only look at 2 of those, and you'd perform one of them yourself, and then there'll be a written paper about your experiment. But then there's also a second part of the paper where you probably have to plan and analyze results from a second experiment. So out of the 5, they could pull out on 2. Okay, they could draw on 2 of those. The practicals are diffusion, so looking at the idea behind diffusion and the practical investigation of diffusion, normally involving agar jelly. There's a biology practical, which looks at plant distribution and what factors affect plant distribution and how you can actually measure that out in on the field using quadrats and transects. There's an experiment on electrical circuits. Okay, Mr. Wilson looks at that one as a physicist. Various different ways of using the electrical circuit. So you might be measuring resistance. It could be current, voltage. Okay. There's also an experiment on enzymes. So you might be investigating the action of a particular enzyme, maybe measuring rates of reaction in some way, maybe changing a certain variable such as temperature or pH. Okay, so that just gives you a bit of a flavour of some of the practicals that are actually involved. And throughout your lower school, you've probably come across diffusion before. You've probably come across enzymes. You've probably come across investigating plant distribution. You've come across electrical circuits. Okay. And like I said, that is it's a practical that will take place, and then there'll be a written paper, and then that provides your grade for that assessment. But like I said, it is a big chunk of the course. Okay, now this last unit, the first 3 units are mandatory. Okay, so whichever type of course you do within the applied science spectrum, you have to do all those 3 units. So Unit 1 with the external exams, Unit 2, the internal coursework, and then the Unit 3, the more practical skills assessment. Okay. Now there's an optional unit, and over the last couple of years I've taught this one as a biologist because I'm quite sporty and quite into my sports science, and this is called human physiology. Now this is quite useful for anybody wanting to go into nursing or sports science or physiotherapy or maybe veterinary nursing or paramedic science or something like that to do with the body and the functioning of the body. So it's quite an interesting one when we have students coming in that actually study PE as well, because they combine quite nicely together, they complement each other. So there's a massive focus on the musculoskeletal system, So obviously in PE they cover that as well, so you're kind of doubling up on things, which is great for revision and retention of information. We look at the digestive system, and we also look at the lymphatic system. Now in lower school you do look at the muscular system and the skeletal system, and you also look at the digestive system, but one system you don't really come across very often in lower school in biology is the lymphatic system. So that's something quite new to you. Okay. This unit is assessed via coursework. So this is again internal coursework where you'll produce posters, leaflets, reports on each of the systems and disorders of those systems. So it might be focusing on maybe looking at arthritis and the cause and the effects of arthritis on the body. It might be osteoporosis. It could be looking at various conditions of the digestive system, such as nutrient deficiencies. Okay, it might be looking at the disorders of the lymphatic system, things like lymphoma or lymphedema, linking in a bit there with cancer, because cancer cells can spread through the lymphatic system. So it's a really, really interesting unit where you start looking at the human body and the intricate workings and dealings within. And like I said, it's great for anybody that's going into a more practical vocational course where they're actually dealing with people. So I've listed there sports science, physiotherapy, nursing. So if you're thinking, yeah, I'm looking at doing that, then this is going to be a great course for you. It's also good for people that do PE because, like I said before, they do complement each other. Okay, now I've taught the BTEC courses for quite a few years now at GCSE and also in A-level, and I've taught this course as a previous version of the course. And sometimes students have there's a stigma attached to BTEC courses where people think that it's easy, and I can tell you it's not. Okay, the content is basically the same as A-level biology, chemistry and physics. Now I teach A-level biology, and there's a lot of things in here that we teach at A-level biology, and in fact there's some things on this course that we don't teach in A-level biology at all. Okay, so I don't want you to come into this course thinking that it's an easy option, because it's certainly not. The difference is the content is the same or similar, but the coursework and the assessment is different. There's a bigger weighting on coursework, so it takes a little bit of pressure off the assessment side of things. You also get more opportunities to actually resit those exams because there's an exam in the January. Okay, whereas in the A-level courses they only sit exams in the summer. So you'd have to wait till year 13 to resit that exam, whereas in the year 12 course, if you don't do very well in January, you could have a go in the summer. Okay, so and it's immediate. The information is going to be fresher in your memory. You don't have to wait a whole year to do it again. Okay, obviously we don't want resits, but sometimes these things happen, don't they? Okay, so the content is similar, but the assessment of that content is done in a slightly different way, a slightly less pressured way. Okay. So hopefully that reduction in your workload and the stress will help out, because if you're doing this course, you've also got maybe 2 other courses you're studying as well, and you don't want all of that pressure. Okay, so for example, say you're taking PE and applied science, but then you're also doing your back as well. That you want to try to reduce the pressure a little bit somewhere. Okay. Now, in terms of UCAS points, as we get towards the end of year 12 and into year 13, people start looking at applying for universities or maybe look at college courses and things like that. And there's always entry requirements that you've got to get. So you're going to have a points total that you require. Now, of course, the applied science course can add into this. Now, this is for the 2 years, of course. If you're doing a 1-year course, it's going to be roughly half of this. But the pass at applied science is equivalent to roughly an E at A level. So that's equivalent to 16 UCAS points. The merit, which is of course what we want minimum for all the students on the course, ideally, that's everybody's target grade the second you walk in, is a merit grade, and that's equivalent to a C at A level, and that's 32 UCAS points. And then you also have the option of the higher grade there, which is the distinction, which is equivalent to an A grade at A level, okay, which is 48 UCAS points. So you might want to start looking ahead at the courses you want to apply for after sixth form, and just to see what type of points you require. Okay, because the distinction is not easy and it requires an awful amount of extra work as well, and you don't want to be doing something that you don't require. Likewise, the other side of the coin if you think, oh, just go for a pass, but actually the points total you need for your next course is quite high, you might not have enough points by the end of sixth form. So you need to start looking ahead to see what you actually require from the course in terms of the final points and the final grade. Now, a big focus on this course is about working on your skills and upskilling you. It's not such a focus like some of the other typical A-levels, where there's a massive focus on theory. There's a massive amount of content you've got to get through to sit that exam, and then a little bit of practical skill. This course, there's a massive emphasis on skills, and these are some of the skills we're going to work on. So you're going to focus on being independent as much as you can. At Key Stage 3 and slightly less so at Key Stage 4, the teacher's kind of there to hold your hand almost through and really guide you and support you. Of course, we want to do that, but we want to be able to go a step back and see how you cope in an environment where it's about you and you've got to find the answers and you've got to research and you've got to produce the reports. Okay, we'll provide you that initial support and structure, but you need to be able to develop those independent skills, because when you go to university, you're pretty much on your own. Okay, we're going to focus on looking at how to write an essay and how to lay out an essay and also a scientific report. So when you go to university or college and you're asked to do that, you've been equipped with those skills and you know the layout that you need to produce. There is a big focus on statistics and numeracy, particularly in Unit 3, the practical skills assessment. So we're going to upskill you in terms of calculating things like the mean, percentage error for equipment. Also look at the t-test and chi-squared as well, and standard deviation. Okay, so there'll be a little bit of that. Now, if you're not particularly good on numeracy and you struggled a little bit with your GCSE maths, don't worry, because we're going to walk you through. And there'll be multiple chances for us to practice these skills, and multiple chances to actually sit that exam as well, if need be. We're also going to work on your literacy skills as well, through writing the essays and writing the reports, to be able to get your point across as effectively and as concisely as you can, but with all the detail required to get the higher marks. That's a particular skill in itself, so you're not waffling on. You're getting to the point, but you're providing significant and sufficient detail to achieve those higher marks. Research skills is important as well, especially when you're doing things like Unit 8, my unit on human physiology, where you might have to research arthritis and you might have to research the effectiveness of a particular treatment or medication. So you've got to have to go and find that information yourself. And picking the first line on Google or Wikipedia sometimes is not the best route. You've got to kind of delve in there and find the best sources, the most valid source, the reputable sources that you know is going to be really accurate. And then the final one there is communication, and that's just not necessarily communication verbally in class by asking and answering questions, but also your communication through your written work. Yeah. When you're writing reports, how well can you communicate ideas verbally, but also on the page as well. Now, as I pointed out earlier on in the presentation, there are lots of different courses you can apply for with the Applied Science course, and like the title says, it's the application of the science to a real life context, whether or not that's a physiotherapist helping someone to correct some form of issue with their anatomy, yeah, maybe a particular joint. It could be nursing, where you're dealing with people that are quite fragile. They've got quite such as an old age pensioner, where you're dealing with a particular condition, maybe somebody with cancer. It's helped make sense to have an understanding what's actually going on behind the scenes. Yeah, it could be sports science, understanding how the body actually works, how the muscles work with the skeletal system to create locomotion or movement. It could be working in a laboratory with a lot of chemicals and producing lots of various different solutions for different purposes, and that's where the chemistry side can actually come in a little bit. It could be looking at the application of science in terms of forensics or paramedic science. So it opens up this massive avenue of various different courses that you can actually go into and then study further to become a specialist in that field. Okay, so in this presentation I've introduced you to our fantastic team. So we've got Mr. Wilson teaching physics, Mrs. Ellis teaching the chemistry, and myself, Mr. Dobson, teaching the biology. Okay, we've probably Between us, we've taught all of you at some point through your time in school through the 5 years, so we're familiar faces, and we'll do the best we can for you to help you through to get the grade that you need to get you to that next stage. I've tried to give you an outline of all the various units, Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, and then Unit 8, okay, and what's involved in those units, and also the weighting of those units on your final qualification, the kind of grade boundaries, what type of percentage you need to perform to get a particular grade, but also how many points they're worth as well. So how many points this course is worth at the end of the qualification. I've tried to answer some of the FAQs, the frequently asked questions, but if there's anything else you need to know, then you'll have an opportunity live to ask me some questions in the sixth form open evening. I'll have a time slot where I can speak to you, or think about half an hour slot. But if there's anything else you need to know, just send me an email. So just on the email system, just put craig.dobson and then the usual bit at the end, and I'm open to answering the questions for you. Okay, but nice talking to you all. Hopefully speak to some of you on the open evening, and I look forward to seeing loads of you in the classroom in September to study Level 3 Applied Science. Thank you for your time.